How are you?
Hey, how are you?
You
Thanks for
did
having
it. You
me.
made it. You survived. It is morning
Yay.
there where you are in Australia, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Yes, 10 past 10 a.m. Sydney time. Hey, everyone. Who's here in Australia?
Let me see. Yeah, there you go. You
Can't
get
hear
to do
you.
this
Oh,
show
there you
with me. I'm in here
go.
somewhere. I just had to make sure I actually show
Okay.
up to the show. Let's see here. Let's do something real quick before we even get started here. Since you are indeed the host of the show, let's see here. Let's do this. We need to give a little love to someone who is special to our show. This is Dr. Marnie Hill Fredero. Paxton, looking forward to
Hi,
another
Dr.
episode of
Money.
Narc Abuse TV. Perfect timing to have Sarah De Silva address this very prevalent and destructive topic. I think we both, right? We both agree with the doctor on that one. Marnie is correct.
Definitely. Thank you, Dr. Money.
What I wanted to get to, since this is our first episode, one of many. So if anybody is watching this, do not be fooled and think we're just going to do a few episodes here and you just sneak in and watch it 24/7 at your own leisure. She has a ton of information to share with you so that you can start to recognize the manipulation and the tactics that come with gaslighting. But we want to start at the ground level. We want to make this show appeal to our viewers who are predominantly millennials, Gen X, and Gen Z. A lot of them are just now learning what gaslighting is. So Sarah's going to walk you through that. For those of you who are seasoned veterans of knowing what gaslighting is, feel free to jump on this bandwagon of educating the next generation. So Sarah, if you don't mind, I want to start off by, well, getting to the basic thing. What is gaslighting?
It's actually awesome to be able to talk about gaslighting from the the baseline of what it is and then explain how it affects us, because a lot of the time, I was just saying to you before, that I make the assumption that a lot of people know what gaslighting is, and then we'll come across people who get a little bit confused online, and they say, well, gaslighting is just, it's a term just used because it was used in a movie. you know the man would change the gaslight and deny that he was changing it, and his
Mm,
wife would get confused about it. And people don't like using such a blanket term for manipulation, but it actually has some categorical facets
mhm,
that explain manipulation in such a really easy to understand way. And when you're talking about manipulation, someone will say, they did this to me, they said this to me, I felt this way. And usually, whatever they said or did can come under one of these facets of gaslighting. So, if we can understand these small facets, how someone can categorically break us down using gaslighting, then we can actually identify, you're doing this, I have a way to respond. You're doing that, I have a way to respond. I understand how it works now, that this is just manipulation. It's not something wrong with me, or there's not something that's going on in my head that's making me make this happen, because that's what gaslighting does. It's a form of manipulation that causes you to question your own reality, deny your own reality how it is at face value, and then try to change or please whoever is in the situation with us to make it seem, or regulate our
mhm,
emotions to make it feel better. So there are small categorical facets, like I said. There is the counter, there is the withhold, there is trivialization, there's denial, there's diversion, and there's stereotyping. And all of these come under a cycle. When we're in the cycle of abuse, a perpetrator will use DARVO, DARVO, which
mhm,
is to deny, attack, and reverse the victim and the offender. So no longer are you the victim of the situation, you are now the person who created the problem. And that's what gaslighting does. It makes you think that you have created a problem that was actually forced upon you. And it starts to make you feel confused after a while. You start thinking, this person is saying all these things about me. I'm starting to believe that they are true. And it starts to form your inner critic or your inner sense of self, which over time becomes quite negative. And it makes you feel negative emotions a lot more than you should.
When those negative emotions start to have a life of their own, they start to take over, essentially.
Yes.
Is what you're describing.
Yeah.
Then the perpetrator, the gaslighter, starts to control not just the environment to create the problem, but they now can control the person, if I understand you correctly.
100%. So the techniques that they use will therefore make you change your own behavior. So you believe when they project something back onto you, so you say, you're doing this to me, this is wrong. And they say, no, you were doing it and you did it to me and you're the wrong person. You will immediately take on board an idea that's not correct about yourself and therefore believe that you are the problem. Therefore, they have control over you because you'll start apologizing every time this problem happens again. They'll say, see, you're doing it again.
Thinking. So a person will go into apologizing. They will
apologize,
start to...
They'll make excuses for the other person's behavior. They will make themselves feel small. They'll do things like walk on eggshells, refrain from reacting, or they might start reacting and that reaction will get used against them because of the situation that they're in. So like, for example, you're getting abused constantly, getting told that you're worthless. And then one day you snap and you say, F you, like, I don't want to be treated like that. You're a bad person for treating me that way. They'll turn it right back onto you. Like I said, with the reverse victim and offender with the Darvo cycle. And they will make you feel like you were the one who made it happen, that you were the one in the wrong. Therefore, they're in control of every part of your behavior because you're immediately unconsciously sending a message to yourself that if I react, I'm a bad person. If I react, this person is going to say that I did something wrong. Therefore, I should start questioning myself. Maybe I am a bad person. Maybe there is something wrong with me. Maybe I actually abuse them. So that's how gaslighting sinks into your inner self, and it makes you start to believe that you are actually an abuser when you are actually being abused. That's why a lot of the time people don't know when they're being manipulated or gaslit. When it first happened for me, I had no idea. It took me many, many years of reading about narcissism, reading about manipulation, reading about gaslighting to ever even accept the idea that I had been abused, gaslit, or manipulated in a very close relationship with my parent. I was protecting them for a long time.
But this wasn't like just a couple of years or a few weeks or a few days. You're talking about a pattern right now.
Yes.
Because you said apologizing and eggshells. Please hold your thought. It is your show, boss. But what I was going to say, I just want to stick this in real quick here. Apologizing and eggshells. Now, somebody will apologize, but that doesn't mean necessarily they're dealing with a gaslighter. But you're talking about beyond that. You're talking about this is happening to you on a regular basis is what you're saying.
Yes. So we're not talking about the run-of-the-mill bad day where, say, your boss yells at you and they're like, oh, you always do this. And then they never say it to you again. It's like, okay, we're in that, normal dynamic where I've done something wrong. They've had a stressful day. We apologize and, we move on. That's growth. That's change of behavior. That's self-reflection. That's empathizing. But when there's a pattern of behavior, we're actually experiencing this on the regular. We're actually experiencing this person abuse us, either project it back onto us or discard us, like throw us away and say, well, I don't like you anymore because you're saying that I've done this to you and, you're worthless and you're horrible and this and that. And then we start to basically, we cave in on ourselves and then we we no longer have control over our ability to respond in that situation. Therefore, like, we start to internalize all of these things that this person is saying about us. And it might not happen at first. It might not happen every day, every week. It might happen slowly.
You mean the gaslighting?
Yeah. So at first you're like,
it'll build, is what you're saying.
Usually it's like, oh, that I said that to that person. They said no. And I'm like, that doesn't feel right, but I'll just accept it because it's kind of confusing. And then slowly the behavior starts to build over time, and we notice that they're doing it more often. And it's usually because the first time it happened, we ignored that red flag feeling and we said, okay, I'm going to accept it because I'm kind of confused. The next time it happens, we feel more confused. It's usually because we don't have a sense of self that has been built up very strong from a child, and that we know what our boundaries are. So people who are abusers don't like people who have a strong sense of self with strong senses of boundaries, and have critical analysis of their environments, because those people are not going to take abuse over time. They want people who don't really know who they are, who are kind of like people pleasy, who are like willing to tread on eggshells and make that person feel better, although they made us feel worse. So over time, they will test the boundaries. They'll go, is this person going to be easily manipulated? They'll test it. The first time, yeah, that person said, or let it happen. So we've set the unconscious message that we're going to allow it. And then it happens again. And then it happens again and again. And then sometimes, like I said, there's the reactive abuse, but it gets put back on us and we start to believe we're the person in the wrong. So then we stop questioning whether there's something wrong with that person. And we're constantly trying to work on ourselves and better ourselves and trying to change our own behavior and be better for them. That's where this people pleaser mentality comes in, because usually a person who is an abuser comes towards someone who is a people pleaser, who doesn't have a strong sense of self, who is easily manipulated, because a people pleaser wants to be pleasing to get their internal validation filled up, because they haven't had that from, growing up probably in an environment where their parent made them feel like they had a sense of self that was never going to be unaccepted by their parent, or, in that environment. But people who have grown up in an environment where their sense of self has been shattered or hasn't even been able to bloom, these people will go to their parents and be like, I'm going to try and be good enough for you and I'll do everything that you do and say. And it still isn't good enough. So we go out into the world and we're like, I'm going to try and do the exact same thing for everyone else when they don't really deserve it.
For the entire planet. And they will love me where others didn't.
Exactly.
And in some cases, if I may ask, I'll throw this out to you. Someone mentioned to me, they went through it not from their parents, but from their siblings. And somebody said from their cousins. I like what you said a little bit earlier, from their boss. So we may have to hunt down emotionally, or something happened to us. And somebody may say, well, it wasn't my parents, but they still may be vulnerable because it was someone that they came across that they wanted to please and didn't get that, is what you're saying.
Yes. Yeah, totally. And sometimes it's actually a really hard thing to face that I had that in my experience with my parent, because I was in complete denial. Personally, I was in complete denial of it. I was told many times that there was something not quite right there. And I was like, no. I was in a situation where I was even advised to go and speak to a social worker to talk about, getting more support, because I wasn't getting enough in the family home. And I was like, what are you talking about? I have everything I need. I go to school, I have my clothes, I get my food. What are you talking about? It wasn't until I got sick, I personally had a health crisis, that I realized that my emotional health was the thing that needed like the most work. And that was the thing that I was completely severely neglected. I had neglected in my childhood and was lacking. So we need to raise the bar about what our level of care and what our level of importance in the development phase comes under, like with emotional intelligence with our children. It's not just your run-of-the-mill giving them shelter and food and making sure they have enough money, because kids who have plenty of money can still have these emotional problems. It's about being heard, being seen, being acknowledged, having your feelings empathized with, and having your cues recognized. Because if that doesn't happen on a regular basis as we grow up, we try to externalize it. We go out to the outer world. We try and take that from outer people or external people outside of our family, in our work environment, wherever it may be, because we don't feel good enough. That sense of self isn't strong enough. And unfortunately, the people that we attract are abusers who get their fill from people who are weaker. They can have power over them. They get their fill. We get our fill. People pleasers get our fill from making other people happy, because then we get an internal sense of validation. Like, I have done a good thing. I'm a good person. They get their fill from feeling power over someone else because they need external validation. So in a way, we work together. We work like magnets. And until we work through that sense of needing to get that external validation, we'll keep going towards people who are going to try and get power over that.
I wanna toss a few things your way. You touched on a few already, but here we go. When it comes to gaslighting, identifying it, the manipulation that comes with it, there are different types of gaslighting. You highlighted there's the counter, there's the withhold, there's the trivialization, and denial.
Yes.
Speak about those, if you could, please. And for anybody that's going to be watching this back later, if you're here right now and you want to take notes, of course, feel free to do so. Go ahead. You were going to say, Sarah?
Yeah, sure. So these are awesome ways to identify what gaslighting is, and you've probably heard them many times. So the first one is the counter. It's a manipulation technique within gaslighting. So the counter will be counter-attacking on what you have done or said. So you might say something like, I don't like what you did there. And they will counter by saying, no, you did that. It was your fault. Or you might say something like, I don't like it when you treat me that way on a consistent basis. Their counter is that you treat me like that too. So, like, what are we going to do about it? There's no sense
like
of
a standoff. It's like an emotional standoff.
Yeah.
What is that?
It's like counterattack. We're looking at battleships here.
Okay.
What's my attack? What's your counterattack? They don't see it as an opportunity to grow, or an opportunity to learn, or an opportunity to communicate. It's not like, hey, I'm dealing with something here. Oh, hey, let's deal with it. Let's talk about it. Let's understand it. It's like, hey, I'm dealing with something here. Oh, that offends me. And here you go. Here's my counterattack. So it's very, very important that we understand that when there's a counterattack, it's just complete defense. It's a defensive response. So countering can also come under withhold. It can come under trivialization. It can come under denial, because a counter can be denial. You can say, you did this to me, and they can counter by saying, no, I didn't.
Okay.
But it's just a complete refusal of taking responsibility. That's what a counter is. It's like, I'm going to counterattack rather than take it on board, listen, empathize, acknowledge. So it's counter. It's project.
With that lack of accountability, and there is no desire to be empathetic, to listen to what someone is going through, what a woman is going through, what a child is going through with an elderly person, an employee, whatever the case may be. They would rather, did you say battleships? I like that.
Yeah.
They'd rather be in a battleship and start shooting some shots and go like, hey, you know what? Let's just get it on. Let's just go back and forth, tit for tat.
Yeah, and you might notice like even especially in like relationships where you have a partner, and you're like, oh, I'm finding it really hard because you don't communicate. Yeah, well, you don't communicate with me, and it's all your fault that this happened. Yeah, but I'm finding it really hard, and I would really like it. Yeah, but that's all your fault as well. Yeah. and you did that, and blah, 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 blah. And eventually you're like this, and they're on top of you again. So you notice it's just like walking on eggshells again. And I'm putting down my response, and maybe even eventually reacting and going, well, F you, because you don't listen to me.
It all escalates and it gets out of control.
Projected back on, which is another counterattack.
Projected back on. So when it comes to trivialization, what do you mean by that? Oh, wait, I just, real quick, I skipped one there. Withhold.
That's okay. Yep.
What are we talking about?
So a withhold is when we refuse to respond. So that's silent treatment. That's refusing to talk about it right now. So say, for example, you come to your partner and you say, hey, I'd really like to talk about our commitment. And they're like, no, we're not talking about commitment. You know, I'm not going to do that. That's a withhold technique, and it's gaslighting, because you feel like it's a really important thing to talk about. And they're like, no, I'm not going to talk about it now. So when you say, when can we talk about it? They're like, well, you know, it's something that I'm not willing to talk about in this relationship. That's gaslighting.
Total shutdown. Total shutdown
Complete
is what you're talking about.
Yeah.
It's the same. Not like somebody's trying to provoke you and you're saying, you know what, this is a touchy subject for us. I'm not going to discuss this right now. We're about to leave and go to this party or whatever it may be.
And so
and then
there's
you
a time and a place, right?
Yeah,
there's a time and a place.
So let's talk about it another time. And then, okay. I
exactly. So when you're talking about a situation, we're about to go out for a party. I don't really want to start an argument about this right now. An emotionally intelligent response would be, hey, I really understand that you're worried about our committed relationship, and I really love you, and I'm willing to talk about this. Let's talk about it when we get back, or let's talk about it tomorrow when we've woken up and we've had some breakfast or something, you know. But complete withhold is when they deny and they're not willing to talk about it. They might even do the silent treatment. So you might say, let's deal with it right now. I can see that you're emotional about something, and they won't even respond. They won't talk to you. They might be in the other room, and you're saying, can you please talk to me? And they won't talk to you. Silent treatment is a withhold tactic. Another one is, an example is like when a child comes to their parent and says, hey, mom or dad, I really don't like it when you yell at me. And the parent's like, I don't yell at you. That's a withhold tactic, because they're like, I'm completely denying, and I'm not going to talk about how you feel. So it's withholding completely. So that's another form of gaslighting.
When it comes to trivialization, what are we talking about?
And that comes under withholding, just like what I said, when the child comes to the parent and says, hey, mum and dad, or mum or dad, I really don't like it when you do this to me. They might say, I don't yell at you, or, you know what, my yelling is just talking, or you're just overreacting.
That's funny. That's actually funny. My yelling is just talking, young person.
Exactly. Yes.
Right.
That's what my mother used to always say to me. This is my talking. This is not my yelling. Like, well, you're yelling at me.
Yelling. Trust me. I think that's what it is.
I'm pretty sure you're yelling.
When dogs want to run, when you speak, when a person does that, just, you know, you should tell them. When you speak, dogs want to run. I think that's yelling. Dogs know, cats know what that is.
Can hear you.
The neighbors can hear you. Yes.
Yes. And it's also just minimizing how you feel. So you come to someone and say, look, I really don't like how, another perfect example in the workplace, I really don't like it how you pile too much work on me, because that's not part of my role in this job. And they go, well, you know what? Like, everyone has it too hard in this environment anyway, and you've got to deal with it. Okay. We've all got it too hard. So just deal with it and you'll be fine. Or you say that something hurts you and they say, no, it doesn't. You know, they try and predict how you're feeling, or they minimize and make it smaller than it is. Yeah. It's a gaslighting technique that makes you feel as though you should change your response about your emotions. Your emotional response is not good. Yeah. And it happens a lot with the parent-child relationship. The child will fall over and they'll be like, oh, my leg hurts. And the parent is like, oh, it doesn't hurt that much.
Yeah, right.
We have to be emotionally responsive and intelligent in our response and go, look, I know it hurts, but it'll be okay soon, you know? Or I understand that you've got too much of a workload, and I'm really going to acknowledge that, and I'm going to try and work towards helping you with that. We can't minimize how someone feels just because we don't understand how it feels personally. We all have different experiences, and it's really important to acknowledge that. And if we don't acknowledge that on a regular basis and we constantly minimize how other people's feelings present, or we trivialize other people's experiences, it's massive in the trans community at the moment. I'm noticing a lot of people, huge trivialization of people who identify as trans in the community. They will say, you know, you were born with a blah blah, and you should just deal with the fact that there's only two genders. It's minimizing their experience of going, well, I feel this way. Why are you saying that I should feel a certain other way?
When you were, I have to ask this, you just made me think of something. When you were experiencing, I don't want to have to open up. If you want to know Sarah and her background, you can watch our other shows that we did. I know you have some stuff here we were going to cover. I just have to ask this. Just popped in my head listening to you speak just here for, we've been about almost 30 minutes now. 30 minutes, almost in a second. There it is. You experience this, what you're talking about, withholding, trivialization, and so forth. I know you didn't see this coming, but you know that when you come with me. Just what was it like for you emotionally to experience that? We're not talking about you having the knowledge already and understanding what it was. Just what was it like in the moment for you to experience that in your family dynamics? And you can, it's up to you if you feel like you want to say to the viewers who you went through this experience with, gaslighting. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, totally. I think it's really important to touch on that because it's so confusing. It's the most confusing experience of your life. You really don't understand what is happening. You come with an experience, you hand it over to someone. In my personal experience, it was my mother. You hand an experience over, you go, this is how I'm feeling about it. And then they will either deny, withhold, divert, trivialize it. And then you're confused. You're like, there's something wrong with how I feel. There's something wrong with me. You start to internalize this feeling. You start thinking, I am this thing that they say. I am a bad child. I am a bad daughter. I am a violent person. I am an angry person. I am the worst child ever. I do cause all this pain. And what we don't realize in the time is that this isn't our voice. It's that person's voice. It was my mother's voice. But I was internalizing it all, saying all of this stuff over and over like a record playing on repeat. So over time, you start putting yourself down. You go, yeah, well, I'm worthless. I'm not going to get what I want. And my mom always said this about me, so it must be true. And then it gets reflected in your experiences, like in your relationships. I start to get into a relationship where I'm being abused. Well, it's because I'm an abusive person too. I'm a bad person. I must deserve this.
Did you really? I just have to ask. We none of my shows are super duper planned. Well, on YouTube they are more than they were on Instagram. Instagram for 2 years, people trusted me and came on. A little bit more planned, but not this. As you're going through this experience, but to you, it's just life with your family.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Until you start to do some research as time goes on.
Yeah.
As you go through that, you're a survivor of a number of different things. And you deal with things all the time. You did a show with me and shocked all of us because you did, I don't know, you must have done, 3-6 shows. I don't know how many shows we did together, but whatever it is, it was always 200-300 people showing up for the group chat. And then one time you were sick. So you're an awesome person. But when you were going through that experience with your family, your mom, then you did some research. Then you became enlightened, informed, and now started educating yourself and others. Did you feel that experience coming back on as you dealt with cancer?
Totally. It came on as the health crisis came on.
Did it? Okay.
It was as though the health crisis was the catalyst for me to pay attention to what I had been denying for my entire life.
Wait. Emotionally, you were denying. The cancer kind of
Emotionally
put a
denying.
spotlight on emotionally what you were denying, because
Totally.
you also had to, of course, deal with it.
Totally. So the experience was actually, in my personal experience, it was actually perfect. It was exactly what I needed. It was a reminder that if you don't deal with these feelings inside where you're feeling confused and you don't know what's really going on and you're confused about this relationship with your parent, if you do not deal with these emotions, you are going to die.
Wow.
Like you are
Wow.
going to get, your body is breaking down and you're not listening to it. I had to listen to it. And even in that experience, I was still allowing my boundaries to be pushed.
Really?
Up until about 6 months into chemotherapy, where my boundaries were still being pushed. I was still asked to do more than I could when I was sick. I had no hair. I had no immune system. I was on the lounge crying every day, and I was asked to give more than I could. And that's when I realized there's something really not right going on here, because even not in this hard experience, my deathbed experience, am I being validated or acknowledged or understood at all. The entire experience was in no way about me. It was about my parent. So that's when I realized there's really something not quite right going on here. And so I started to stop denying that there was probably something very terribly wrong with this relationship and with this person. And I didn't know what it was.
You decided to stop giving them all the leeway, and
Acceptance.
you started to now look at yourself and say, hold on a second. Let me see what I'm giving myself, because this is not making any sense. What's happening?
Exactly right.
Because I'm sick.
Yeah. Yeah.
You were dealing with cancer at the time. Yeah. Was that a moment in time? Was that a pivotal moment in time for you that led you to where we are today?
100%. It was the catalyst, like I say. Like, it was the biggest shift for me to realize that I have only, after many years of therapy, realized that I had complex PTSD from my childhood experiences, which caused the manifestation of the cancer. I was born with the BRCA gene as well. And my mother also had breast cancer. But I got breast cancer at 27. So I was like, why am I getting cancer so young when my parent only got cancer, later in life? Why am I not able to manage my stress? Why do I feel like my emotions are all over the place? So I had to do a lot of therapy to first identify what was really going on. Then when I identified the relationship dynamic, that's the first thing that I identified, was that it was a codependent relationship dynamic. Before I even understood that it was narcissism, I was like, oh, okay, there's a full codependence on me to be their caregiver. And at the same time, I'm getting something from them in return. I'm getting, validation that I'm a good daughter. But it was a very toxic dynamic. So I had to accept all of these bad things about the person, although they didn't accept the bad things about me. Heaps of gaslighting going on. You're a bad daughter. You have to make it up to me, even though I'm abusing you. So at the time when I got sick, I had to stop accepting, because I thought that was what was going to save the relationship, and start looking at my denial and going, oh no, maybe my parent isn't a good person. Maybe my parent was really abusing me. And I felt immense guilt and shame for even admitting that, because I was like, this is my parent. This is my parent. You cannot say that about your parent. And I've never even admitted it to myself. And my parent always said, I'm a good mother, and I did this for you, and I did that for you, and all the sacrifices I made for you. Guilt and shame and guilt and shame and guilt and shame. So I was living in this guilt and shame cycle. I cannot even accept the fact that my parent abused me. So this is what people might be going through right now. They might realize that they are a people pleaser. They might hear the inner critic, but they might still be in denial that this is going on. And that's really hard.
Then I have to ask you this. I knew this was going to happen. I told you before the show, we're going to go in a whole nother direction just if something happens. But I have to ask, and then I want to get to something that Marnie has, Dr. Marnie Hill-Fredero has put on the screen. We'll get to that in a moment. But you had already bought into the fact that you were, as it were, a bad child because you had a good parent. But now you're reassessing that dynamic of your parent. Did you start to, stand erect that hey, wait a minute, I'm not that bad of a person? Or did you start to feel, as you said, guilt? Did that guilt double down, triple, quadruple? Because now you're like, I must really be a bad person. I'm thinking this.
Exactly right. It was the second one where the guilt and the shame quadrupled down on me. I went through about 6 months of about, daily crying and really and trying to understand oh my gosh, all of this is happening. So I decided that there's too many thoughts going around in my head. I started therapy. And for anyone who cannot get to therapy right now, regardless of whether you're in therapy right now or not, and you're starting to realize this is happening, get a book or a journal or whatever that you're willing to throw away and start writing down your memories. Because when you start to write down and acknowledge these experiences and how you felt about them, it doesn't matter about if you're feeling guilt or shame or feeling bad about acknowledging these experiences. Allow yourself to feel that pity for yourself because you've never allowed yourself to feel it before, and really release the emotion. That 6 months of crying released so much suppressed and repressed emotion that I'd been holding on to, that I had never allowed myself to experience because my parent had told me that I couldn't. So I allowed myself to feel all of that. Then I realized it's okay to feel all of this. It's actually okay. It's actually okay to share my experiences with other people now. And I realized that by starting to share them, I was actually one of many people in the community that experienced the exact same thing. And that's what got me deep into this, studying gaslighting, manipulation, and narcissism, because this is a predictable pattern that we can identify, and we can also empower ourselves to get out of and work through and heal from. It's not something that we have to be stuck in.
How did you put it? It's a predictable pattern?
Predictable pattern, yes.
Similar to what you touched on at the very beginning. We have been able to look at gaslighting in an overview of it so far in this first episode. You are in for a treat because there will be plenty more coming your way. There is plenty more coming your way from Sarah and others that you will see here on Narc Abuse TV Network. They will all step into our virtual studio to do what Sarah is doing right now. You're informing others and you're educating others. This is going to be an educational tour with and journey with Sarah, and you're going to love it. We have 8 different things that we were going to highlight today. We've covered 4 of them. There is no way we're going to have time to cover the other 4 because, as always, I have surprises for my guests. And so this is not necessarily a guest show. I don't even know why I keep saying that. This is Sarah's content. This is Sarah's show. But because she stepped in the studio, I get to pull up stuff and then put it up on the screen and ask her about it. But first, we got to go with, first of all, we're going to do Of Refrain. Of Refrain said big hugs to you, Sarah.
Thank you.
Then, of course, Dr. Marnie says, can you ever have success reasoning with a parent? I'm going to look over here at the bigger monitor because my little old man eyes. Can you ever have success reasoning with a parent that is a master gaslighter? Is it okay to go no contact when you finally understand you've been gaslit by your parent your entire life? Guilt is big. This is a very common thing with a number of individuals we've got a chance to experience. Your thoughts,
Massive.
Sarah?
Yeah. And this is one of the hardest things to accept about going through this kind of abuse, that the end result sometimes means that you're going to go no contact with this person.
You've experienced that, right? Is that where you are right now?
Personally, that is the result that I chose to come to, and it has been the best decision for me. And as time goes on, I realize more and more how great that decision is for me. However,
How do you say that? Before you get to however, why do you say that?
because the more space and time I give that experience between where I was,
Yeah.
because I decided to go no contact at the 6-month point in chemo. That was when I went, you know what, when I was being asked of more than I could, said, you know what, that's it. I am so sick. I do not have anything to give anyone anymore.
Yeah.
I'm cutting you off now. That's it. No more. I have nothing else. So I said, that's it.
I gotta ask, were you an overnight cutter of it off?
Yes.
Cut it off. Were you in the moment cut it off, or a few days you had to think about it, in a few weeks cut it off?
It was a thought process that had been happening for at least a year.
Okay.
The thing that actually started the thought process was the community. Being a part of a community is really important, because you understand that there's so many different layers of these kinds of relationships, so many different choices people make, and it's all okay based on what is best for you. But I thought at the time that I was going to, you know, do the best I could to put up as many boundaries as I could, but the boundaries were still being pushed. So I decided there's no other option. I'm going to go no contact. And it was a spur of the moment decision. I'd had a phone call with my mother, and she had said to me that in my illness, she expected me to, because I didn't drive at the time, catch a 2-hour train to go with her to go to see a doctor for her own health. It wasn't to do with my own health. And I said, no, I've been told by the doctor that my immune system is too low, shouldn't be going on a germ-ridden train to travel 2 hours just to come to help you to go to your doctor. You're an adult, you can do that yourself. She said, no, I need support from my daughter, and made me feel terrible about it. And that's when I said, I had already given her a week's notice. And then she had the nerve to ask me, because I had told her that week I was having a round of chemo and I was going to feel even worse that following week. She had the nerve to ask me to tell the doctor to skip that round of chemo so I could go to the appointment with her. And I said, I cannot believe in this situation you are asking me to skip a very important medical treatment just to come to a doctor's appointment with you. And I was like, there's really something completely wrong with this. That's when I went, look, I think it's just time. And I sent her a text message. I did not say it in a phone call. I said, I'm going to cut contact now. If and when I decide to, I will contact you again, but that's it. And there was consequences to that. I felt guilty. I felt horrible. I cried and I had to do a lot of therapy. I felt like a terrible daughter. Like I had abandoned my parent because she was codependent on me. She relied on me for a lot of things. I was like, I'm such a horrible person, especially with the societal idea that you have to honor your parents and that it's your parent and you should never do anything like that to your parent. Unfortunately, when you become an adult, you have this ability to hold your parent accountable. And that's what I tell all of my clients. You have the ability to now hold them accountable for their actions and their behavior. You're no longer their child that they can have power over. And if it's necessary, you can go no contact. If necessary, you can have minimal contact, but that minimal contact has to have very strong boundaries that you decide upon, not what the parent decides upon.
Were you ever able in a position where you're able to talk about your situation with her, or was it just pure gaslighting, 1,000% on you, and nothing was open for discussion? Or would you say, you said counter, withhold, denial is what you were experiencing no matter what?
Yeah. It was always that experience. That's why I decided over time that there's never going to be an ability to get through to her. I feel like she is the most pathological you can get in terms of a narcissist that does not have the ability to self-reflect or empathize with others. So I was like, it's not going to help my mental health to try and get through to this person in any way. It's only going to detriment my mental health.
So
I had an experience. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. You were going to say.
Okay. Yeah. I had an experience where I did test that. I did test it, and I shared a very, very pivotal, horrible, traumatic experience with my mother. Yeah. I had an experience with sexual abuse when I was a child, and I had kept that secret from my parent because of who it involved my entire life. And so I decided to test it to see, my parent had started to project things onto me. We were having an argument. My mother had said, you're just like my mom. She doesn't care about me. She doesn't love me.
Wait, your mom said to you, you're just like your grandmother.
Yes. You don't care about me. You don't love me.
That's a whole nother show. We're going to need to get into that. That I never knew. You never knew. But
totally.
Go ahead. Tell me the story.
So that's another, like, that's the counter, right? I said, no, I'm not going to do this for you. She'd asked to push up another boundary. So she decided to counter by saying, projecting all of these things onto me. So gaslighting. So I said, you know what, Mum, I'm going to tell you something. I'm going to tell you something that I've been holding on to that I've never told you before. And I want you to understand that, so you can understand that I'm a human being, that I am not a bad person, that I've actually been protecting you from things that have happened to me to make you feel better. Right. So I went there the following week, and I told her what happened. And I said, I really want you to apologize after I told her that it had happened. Wow. I really want you to apologize for making me feel terrible about that. And she said, no, I'm not going to. And I had to cry, and she said sorry by looking away from me, did not actually properly apologize to me. And then afterwards said, now I know why you acted like that towards me. Now I know why you hated me so much. She made it all about herself, my sexual abuse situation. So that's when I realized there's no way this person is ever going to understand my feelings, ever going to empathize with my experiences, and ever going to self-reflect on how maybe they had a say or had any kind of what's the word? They had a responsibility in what happened there. Then
there's never going to be any realization, no epiphany. There was nothing coming to get them to that point. Yeah. But when it comes to you moving forward with your life, I got to throw something in here. Let me do this on the screen here. We got this from Marnie. Marnie, totally. Her and Anushka, they both did a show together here. We have once a month a show entitled Healing from Narcissism 2022. You are a seasoned veteran of that because you're one of the 5 that started that with us last year, Sarah. But Marnie just did it. And so Marnie has this thought for you. She says, writing helps you cope. Going over here again. Writing helps you cope and release the pain. Then sharing provides validation. This is indeed from a credible source because I have her 4 books over here, or rather 3 books over here, and she has a 4th because she's specializes in helping people write things out. Was journaling or anything like that a part of your process to gain your voice again and your strength?
100%. Yeah, it was important just to get the thoughts that were cycling in my mind out of my head. And then also just to go back and look at those experiences, realize how many I had, that these had been accumulative. It wasn't just one thing. Sometimes you seem to mentally go back to one experience and replay it over and over and over again until you accept those accumulative experiences that led to maybe PTSD or complex PTSD or anxiety or depression or a feeling that there is no hope in your life. These things all contributed to that over time. These things led to that sense of inner critic. And if you let them out and express them,
Yeah.
It actually does, as much as you don't think or feel that it will, it does create space, internal space, for you to acknowledge who you really are, what you really want, what you really like, what you desire, what your goals are in life, and who this person is that the other person has been telling you you are, who that person actually is. Because when I started to reflect on those things and go, well, my mom told me I was a violent person, but that was because my dad was violent. And so I started to write all these things down, going, but I didn't actually act violently. Maybe I yelled at my mom and I talked back and I slammed my door. So I told my therapist about that, and my therapist told me that that's very normal behavior. But I was told and gaslit to believe that I was a violent child. So I started processing that, and then I started to realize, no, I'm not a violent child. I'm not a bad child. I'm actually quite a funny person. I like to make jokes.
I've
I
heard
like
this so
to
much.
be
I've
funny.
heard this from other people, and I hear you saying this, and that's
Yeah.
why I wanted to do this thing with gaslighting. I
Yes.
find this extremely intriguing because it convinces a person who's funny, you, of course, but others across this planet, funny, hardworking, really great people, you're just rotten. You're just a rotten person. And they just keep pounding that person into believing that, and that person, one of these days, you're going to have potential. You're going to be all right one of these days, I'm better than you. And one of these days, matter of fact, you're the cause of my pain is often, as you describe, what happened to you. I,
100%.
I need to pivot because we're not going to give everything away. If you're wondering, in the first episode, people, you're going to have to keep coming back because she is a bevy of encouragement and information. I've got to get to this. Here we go on the journey. You've been on this ride before, but here we go. I'm going to do a few things here. First of all, let's bring in something here. Let me get to this, get to that. And I'm going to put something on the screen that actually is from you.
Awesome.
And here we go. It says this is from your Instagram page at Heal the Mum Wound, as everyone can see there. From your Instagram page, old man's got to turn this way. And it says, notice how abuse gets worse when you start inserting more boundaries. My goodness, that sounds like what we just got through discussing. You broke down gaslighting at the beginning. Actually, what is it? And its many different elements. There were 8 different things that we were going to highlight today. We wanted to make sure we covered 4, and we have done that. But also you mentioned here, if this is happening, it is a sign that your boundaries were never okay. What do you mean by those 2 sentences?
So generally, when we're in a relationship with a person that has been benefiting from us being a people pleaser or having a lack of boundaries, it's because we didn't have any boundaries in the first place, and that person liked having that sense of power over us. So when you put the boundaries in, that person who was benefiting from your lack of boundaries is now hating it, because the boundaries are now there. It's like saying my door's always open, and then they start taking everything from your house. So you say, now my door is closed, and they start bashing the door down. And they go, how dare you? I'm going to keep taking everything from your house. And you're like, no, I said the door's open. I didn't say you could take everything.
Right.
Good
And
metaphor,
at the same and at the same time, if we're going that route, as you mentioned, the narcissist, we got a thought there also from John Daniels has a thought there on the screen. We'll get to that also in a moment. But you essentially, if you don't stop them, they're going to take over, like you're saying. But then when you do, they want to go to a whole nother level. We're going to get to this one of these episodes, the smear campaign. Then they want to attack you. If not in person, they're going to get other siblings or other friends and so forth, other people to get involved. John Daniels has, this is also not only a parent, but friendships and relationships, he mentions as well. Any thoughts on that before we keep going?
Yeah, 100%. And it happens if it happens in our dynamic when we're growing up, it transfers to friendships and other relationships and work relationships, all kinds of relationships. You'll see these kinds of signs popping up where people are testing your boundaries. And if you've allowed them to overstep the boundaries in the past, you might notice as you start to build up your boundaries and learn to become strong and heal, new people don't push those boundaries because you've established them straight up. But the old people who were still in your life, who didn't like you having boundaries, this is where the smear campaign and the discard comes in. Because I'll give the perfect example, which is my personal example. When I decided to go no contact with my parents, the consequence was that my parents told my sisters that I was a bad person. My sisters have a disability. They are easily manipulated. They don't know a lot about when they're being manipulated. They don't know what a red flag is. So my parent, in essence, loves that because she can have exactly what she wants with my sisters. There's two of them and they're twins. So she has basically smear campaigned, said that they can't come stay with me, that I'm a bad person, that I'm a bad sister. Every time I talk to them, I say, would you like to come to my house? And they freeze. They wait. Their face will go white. Like they cannot talk about it because it's something that my parent has drilled into them, that you are not allowed to go see your sister. She's a bad person, basically. I'm allowed to go there. I'm allowed to go see them for an hour or whatever it is, a few hours, but only under her circumstances. I accept that boundary because I'm not going to push it. I have an ability to self-reflect, and I'm not going to try and make more abuse, create more abuse in that situation and create more trauma for my sisters. I accept that is what the boundary is and I take it. But unfortunately, I've been discarded because I put up a boundary. So the thing with going no contact was, I said it was for a limited amount of time, but because I established that I knew what she was doing, when it came to Christmas time and things like that, I sent Christmas messages, but they were ignored. That meant that I was discarded because I am a bad daughter for ever bringing up that she was doing that. So I'm discarded. There's a smear campaign. That's because I had boundaries and I said, I can't do things for you anymore. That should not be the way a relationship works. There's a give and a take. And I like to tell my clients that two people in a relationship are there to give 100% each, right? And that makes a 200% relationship. So if only one person can give 50%, there's still 150%. If the other person can only give 50%, there's still 100%, right?
Yeah.
But if we're a people pleaser stuck in a narcissistic relationship, they're giving 0 and we're giving 200.
Yeah.
That's how it works.
Hey, so I just gotta ask, at what point do you get in good graces then? If you've been, because you got it we have it on the screen, you got it in that posting right there. They are indicating that because you have started to change, you will be punished or discarded. I find this behavior fascinating to me, that people are that's silly
about things. It might not be outright
things.
punishment.
You're going to
well.
be punished
and discarded. It might be really covert. It might be like they just stop talking to you, or they,
you don't get invited.
Some people you don't get invited to parties anymore. It's just like. What?
But you're right. You write something there. You say punish and discarded until you yield, and then of course you give the encouragement. One word starts with a D. Don't. But you're saying yield, my friend. If you yield, that's like. No, that's like
Think
bad, because the punishment isn't it gonna get worse if you just? I'm just saying. Like,
think about it in terms of war. I'm watching Game of Thrones at the moment, and I was hearing them use the word yield, and I was like, that's a really cool metaphor. Think about war, right? And let's not go too deep into that, but if we're talking about two teams and there's war and one has to yield, what happens to the team that yields? They get turned into prisoners or slaves, or they get taken over and controlled, right?
Yes, correct.
That's what happens in exactly that kind of situation. You become a prisoner to gaining their approval and trying to be good enough for them.
Never ending. It's never ending.
It's never ending. They're going to keep treating you like that.
There is no mutual, there's no common ground of humanity at that point. where you're saying, well, you said it beautiful, in a beautiful way much earlier. There is no two people saying, hey, you know what, let's talk about this. We're supposed to be partners. We're supposed to be a team.
Yeah.
This is how I'm being affected by what's taking place. But no, what did you say earlier? My notes over here. What did you say earlier? They're going to denial. They're counter. Counter is what you said.
Yeah, they're going to.
It's battleship. It's battleship mode.
It's like, here's my counterattack. Here's my counterattack. Here's my counterattack. But you're like, can we just talk about it? But no, here's my counterattack again. I'm not going to talk about it.
It's kind of like, do you want steak for dinner? No, it's a counterattack. Oh, you're always trying to force steak on me. It's like, wait a minute, calm down. Look, Marnie puts on the screen, yes, to John Daniels, his statement. Usually after you realize you've been gaslit by a friend, I don't know why I'm looking this way beside the camera. I'm going to look this way. Gaslit by a friend or partner. It's later on that you look back and realize that we most likely experienced this with a parent.
Yes.
Amazing. Good point. She has another one here, and feel free to expound on these and talk a little bit more. The gaslighter smears and gets others to gang up on you. Now, I've heard that so much over the past couple of years of doing these shows. It's amazing. They love to engage others in the abuse. You mentioned your sisters.
Yeah, exactly.
But like John Daniel said, this could happen in friendships.
Exactly. And think about the classic Mean Girls story, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure everybody's seen Mean Girls. We turn everyone against that one person.
Oh, let me help you. Let me help you with that. Yes, I have seen the movie. I just want to throw that in. I don't want nobody to think I didn't see it.
But if you haven't seen it, it's the typical cliquey mean girl group where if someone's not doing what everyone else does, then they all turn that person against, everyone against that person.
Yeah.
And that person is no longer cool enough. That person is no longer good enough. Yeah. And we start to engage in abuse against that person. And we can see it on macro scales as well. Like without getting too deep into it, I'm not swinging one way or another, but there has been a huge example of this, people ganging up on anti-vaxxers as opposed to people who want to get vaccinated. It's been this huge narrative. It's like, why can't we all just accept the other people? No, we need to go and throw shade on the other person or throw shade on that other person, regardless of what their belief is, because that means that we've got people behind us who are on our team. That makes us feel less alone in the world, but it's not a very good way of relating to people, because if we're not relating to people on healthy levels, in healthy ways, then we're going to keep engaging in behaviors that are going to make us versus them a really common theme in all of our relationships.
So when you broke down the 8 different things we were going to talk about, you're saying the 4 that we talked about: counter, withhold, trivialization, denial.
Yeah.
That is an us against them personality behavior, personality and lifestyle.
Yes.
It doesn't matter whether they're getting gasoline to wherever, they're going to always be at one another. Matter of fact, I just got to put this up here on the screen because you're ignite again. Anytime I have you on, you're always igniting something. Conversation is what you always ignite. Marnie says, Dr. Marnie says, yielding is starting the cycle all over again.
Yeah.
Now that may be hard for some people to understand that part. That they're being, based upon what you're saying, I'm just going to use my layman's term. You're the student of psychology. So the gaslighter is really provoking, manipulating, provoking, starting trouble.
Yes.
They're waiting for that person to yield.
Yes.
But I'm just follow me. If I'm wrong, just correct me. And Marnie, if you're still out there, just correct me. They're waiting for that person to yield so they can keep going.
Yes.
And do it. They're not going to do it and they go like, oh man, that was good. That was fun. I'm never going to do that again. Right? They're going to keep going.
Systematically. Yes. It's systematic. And it's almost as though you're like, are you playing a game with me? Like, you will get so confused and be like, how are you actually doing this? And I like to tell my clients that it is predictable. You can actually say with a person like this that if I do this or say this, they're going to act like this. So yielding is going back and going, I'm accepting that they're going to act like this and they're going to keep acting like this and treating me that way. over and
Okay.
over and over again, because you know that it's been a pattern of abuse. It's not just one time. It's not like they do it one time, like I said, your boss is having a bad day and he yelled
Yeah.
at you, and then you're like, oh,
Yeah.
sorry. It's like every single time you interact with this person, there's a feeling of confusion, or there's a negative feeling inside, or there's a sense of your internal critic speaking louder. And then you, in order to feel better in that situation, if you're not aware of the manipulation going on, you yield. You will go back. You will tread on eggshells. You will make yourself smaller, because you want to regulate that environment to make sure that that environment is safe. We want to make sure that we feel safe in that environment. And for example, like a relationship with the parent, it doesn't feel safe when our parent doesn't think that we're good enough. It doesn't feel safe when our parent says that we're a bad child. So what are we going to do? We're going to people please more. We're going to try and get more validation from them. We're going to try harder. And until we realize that that cycle is going to be never ending, that stopping the yielding is going to prevent further abuse, and it's actually going to protect us, and then actually help us to heal and gain more further internal approval that we needed to get. And then realize that most of the time, if we ever go back, like for example, I know the longer I spend away from that relationship with my mum, I realize if I ever go back, it's going to go back to the exact same way it was before. It's never going to change.
But you're not going to be the same. But you're
No.
saying the environment is still festering with that mindset, or as of the refrain says, so many crescendos with a narc, so many. So that environment is still breeding and teeming with gaslighting behavior, manipulation.
And they've got other supplies that they're dealing it out to.
Yeah, and they're dealing it out to whomever they can latch on as a supply, as maybe one supply becomes more informed and educated, becomes a part of a community of individuals who help them see that, well, wait a minute, this is not normal. And they start to listen. So supply gets kicked around.
Yes.
Do me a favor. Here we go. I need to do this before we end up having to go today. Everyone, please, let's take a listen to something here. This is going to be Sarah talking here. Hold on a second here. Let me get over here. I'm going to get that off the screen, and we're going to get over here and do this.
An abuser will be consistent in their actions. If you find that someone behaves in a way that is rather predictable, and by predictable I mean that you know how they're going to respond if you act, do, say, or don't say whatever it may be, and you are 100% aware of how they will respond, especially if that response is negative, then you are more than likely dealing with an abuser. Stay grounded in reality, keep your response consistent, and remind yourself of what is true.
Do me a huge favor. I really just want some type of, you know what? Hold on a second. I got so many toys over here. I'm gonna do this one. I just want you to shed a little reminder to everyone of something they can keep in mind when it comes to dealing with an abuser. What daily habit could a person keep in mind? You never saw this coming, so I did this on purpose.
That's okay.
So what daily habits worked for you when you had to deal with an abuser, a gaslighter? What can someone keep in mind to protect themselves against someone like that?
Yeah, so like I said at the end of that video, if we keep our response consistent, and that comes under a very effective method when we're dealing with gaslighting or narcissistic abuse.
Okay.
It's called Grey Rock method. And that's one method of keeping your response consistent. So if someone's abusing you and you respond by acting as plain as a grey rock. So what does a grey rock do? They sit there, they don't say anything. Or they might, you know, if a grey rock was able to talk, it'd probably be like, yes, no, okay. So if someone's like, oh, you're such a bad daughter and blah, blah, blah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. And then we just ignore them, you know, and we walk away, because we know that is not, it's not going to fuel the fire. It's not going, if we try and respond and go, no, I'm not, they're going to counter, they're going to deny, they're going to withhold, they're going to do all the things. We know that it's predictable. So we go back and we go, you know what, I know that it's predictable. So I'm going to keep my response consistent and just start to be as plain as a gray rock and say yes, no, and okay. I'm going to stay grounded in reality. And that means that I'm not going to deny what I'm seeing in my face. I'm not going to deny what I'm hearing. If they're saying I'm a bad person, I'm not going to deny that they might be a bad person for saying that to me. I'm going to stop denying that I'm a good person. And I'm going to stay grounded in reality that I know that I didn't do anything wrong and that how we are interacting doesn't feel right. Now, if I can keep staying grounded in reality about this relationship not feeling right, and I relate that to other relationships in my life that feel good, then I'll realize that this relationship is not beneficial for me. That's staying grounded in reality. If I'm not staying grounded in reality, I'm denying that there's a problem in this relationship, and I'm continuing to perpetuate the cycle, and therefore probably attracting more negative relationships.
Well, we're talking about being in a lifestyle, if a person is in denial of gaslighting and these types of behaviors, that they could go 10, 20, 30, 40 years in situations, in relationships that are extremely emotionally damaging to their physical health. Extremely emotionally damaging to their physical health. They just find themselves being beat up emotionally. Sarah, Gaslighting 101 with Sarah De Silva is what you have been able to watch here. This free TV that's on Instagram. On Instagram. Look at me. See, YouTube. I'm going back to my old days. Oh, I don't believe that's my first time doing that. On YouTube, as YouTube Live, is something that you will see regularly with Sarah. There is a lot of information in front of me that Sarah has. There was no way that we could have crammed it all in today. We were going to try to be an hour. We've got an hour and a little over 15 minutes. I need to do a couple of things, Sarah, before we go. Thank you for giving of your time there in Australia.
Thank you.
It
Thanks
is,
for
of
having
course, here in California, 5:21 in Southern California. Here we go. I'm going to do something here, and I need you to give me your thoughts. I want to put this up before we have to go. This posting you did on your Instagram page, people can find you at Heal the Mum Wound. That is the same on Twitter, correct? Because that's where we met. It's the same on Instagram, yes. Correct? I don't even want to say the word now. I'm scared to say it. YouTube's been so nice to me since we've been here only for a few months. And it is also the same at Heal the Mum Wound on YouTube, if I got that right, correct? You have a YouTube channel.
It's Sarah De Silva on YouTube, but I'm looking at changing that. I don't know with my YouTube page at the moment.
But, so you will find her in those different social media locations, and of course you will always find her here along with some other uploaded videos of shows we've done earlier last year and so forth. This is people will show you how much empathy they have when confronted. When they experience emotions, they will go either way. Do they blame, deny, make excuses? That's one way you describe. And then you describe, do they reflect, accept, and apologize? Now, you say there's a difference. Let's talk about that real quick. Because, I told you, majority of the audience here on YouTube, they're millennials, Gen X, and Gen Zs. They have no idea what you're talking about here. Shed some light if you can, please.
Yeah, totally. So with this one, that's in essence the way we can describe what gaslighting is. So when someone is confronting you, or when you are confronting them, they're going to have a response to that. Now, it can be a minor confrontation, like you forgot to take the rubbish out, or it can be a major confrontation, like you're being abusive. So two people, one person will deny, make excuses, and blame. These are all forms of gaslighting, saying it's your fault. That's counter. Denial, that's gaslighting, saying, no, I didn't do that. Completely denying your reality. Making excuses, so that's trivializing, that's withholding, that's actually not actually interacting with your confrontation or acknowledging it or validating your feelings. So another person, excuse me one second. So another person comes along and you confront them, minor or major, and they reflect upon it. And they say, oh, I see how you feel, and I accept that, and I see my part in it, and I apologize, and now I change my behavior for the better. I don't do that ever again. That kind of person has empathy, and there's a very low likeliness that they're going to consistently abuse you because they have the ability to self-reflect. Someone who has the ability to self-reflect is probably a conscious, compassionate, and empathetic person who is going to look at how they affect others and therefore change their behavior. But it's also important to look at people who are empathetic and not take advantage of that, because they could be a recovering people pleaser as well.
When it comes to this situation that a person can find themselves in, blame, deny, and they make excuses. And then they turn right around and interact with someone who is going to reflect, and they're going to accept and apologize for behavior that may have caused problems. Sometimes that's not what people deal with every day. That type of person accepting, apologizing, and reflecting. Well, Marnie just highlighted that, sometimes 60 years someone has been with somebody who all they do is blame, deny, and make excuses. You're saying no matter what the scenario, we must stay grounded.
Yeah, so we could be in a 60-year relationship and be consistently self-sabotagedly, in a way, denying that we're in a situation like that. So the importance of staying grounded is accepting the reality as it is, accepting what behavior that you've been taking on board. And sometimes that's going to come with a feeling like, I'm ashamed of myself for dealing with this for so long.
Right.
I feel guilty for keeping it a secret. And I am ashamed to tell people that I'm in an abusive relationship. I'm ashamed to tell people that I'm in no contact with my parent because they were abusive with me. It's really important to stay grounded in the reality that you're not alone. There are other people who have experienced this too. It doesn't make you a bad person. It doesn't make you damaged. It just means that you have some healing to do. It means that you can come and bounce back from this experience, but there are going to be some hard parts to face. And that's the hardest part of it, that we may not want to admit that we have to leave a person that we've been with for a long time, or we might have to go no contact with a family member. We might have to have an assertive conversation with a friend or a boss or a colleague, etc. But these are all parts of staying grounded in reality and growing personally to change our environment to where we want it to be. If our environment is where we want it to be, it's one where we can flourish, one where we can grow, one where we have the ability to communicate, express how we feel, and have that heard and acknowledged and validated. That's what a healthy relationship is. And if we're not experiencing that, then it's time to reflect upon that relationship and that person and that dynamic. Sometimes the person will be willing to work through it and grow with you.
Right.
That's totally possible. But sometimes, like with me, you realize that that's just not possible and you decide to cut that person off, and that's still okay.
Working through these emotions and feelings of guilt and shame is something that is internal, and that seems to be where a lot of work, we can end up taking on a lot of work to do that. A lot of work is. And no matter how much we try to put a lot of work in the other person, it's not going to go the way we think. We're better off putting that work into our emotions and sitting through those emotions. As you mentioned about yourself and sitting through certain emotions. Listen, so much for the hour, huh? We were going to go for about an hour. I knew it. I already
So
know.
much to talk
Listen,
about.
we've tried this too many times. I've done this too many times with you. I've got a lot of long videos with you because, we're just going to talk an hour, okay? All right? Just an hour. And what do you tell me? Go like, well, I can get to going. I go like, piece of cake, covered. And then I get to going with you, and we both end up talking a lot. Look, what I need to do is tell everybody, remind everybody, please, Sarah has a YouTube page. I need you to go over there and let almost did it again. Let YouTube know that you like Sarah, and hit the subscribe button. When you hit the subscribe button, you're letting YouTube know that you like her and you want her videos out more than other people's. So when everybody's jockeying for that, YouTube has an amazing decision to make. And of course, you will see Sarah here. Let's see, what do we got here, Sarah? We are going to have Sarah back March 31st, which is April 1st for you, because you are a day ahead of us here.
Yep.
You're in Australia. And then Sarah will be back again April 14th here in the States, April 15th for you. And that's just the beginning. You will be back a number of times based upon how much content you want to share on this platform, Narcabuse TV network. Now, any last words that you want to share now that I had you talk so much now, your poor voice. Any last thoughts before we go?
Just to know that anyone who's dealing with this, that there is support out there, that there are people who are experiencing what you've been through and that have actually healed from what you are experiencing at the moment. So, like, for example, with me, I experienced this personally. Sharing it with others has helped people in the community just to heal by hearing it. Mm-hmm. But also people come to me and ask me to help support them. And that's the insight that I have into that experience by helping myself, by also helping others. And now that I can see that there's a bit of a pattern when it comes to healing from this. And my one-on-one coaching program works through that pattern. It's very personalized because, some people have different ways of dealing with their abuse. They're at different levels of their healing. So I obviously will definitely tailor that to suit your experience. But there is a very distinct process that a person will go through when they're healing from this experience. And a lot of the time, the first experience is just learning who you are, what you want, and how you feel about it, which is just the first step of acknowledging what you've been through, because a lot of people don't do that. So know that there's support, that I know what you're going through if you do need that support, and you can reach out to me on any of my pages at any time.
Wow. You are an emotional pit bull when it comes to these subjects. You just go right through them, and you explain everything so well. I have a number of notes here. I'm going to try my best to turn them into show notes and put them together for you. Thank you so much for giving of your time. Are you ready for this? I have a gift for you.
Thank you.
Gift. You ready for your gift? I put something together for you. I have no idea what I'm doing, but no, I'm just kidding. I'm just joking with you here. So everybody, thank you so much. We appreciate it. We got to go. We're going to wave at you. Saying goodbye, everybody.
Bye,
we'll see
everyone.
you next time. Thank you for enjoying the first
time.
episode of Gaslighting 101 with Sarah De Silva. See you later, my friend.
Bye.